This is Me, I Am Mental, the podcast. A quick disclaimer. The content you find here is neither intended to be therapy or diagnosis. It is provided for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Me and Mental, the podcast, where we endeavor to bring you factual, credible, useful, and engaging information on mental health. My name is Charles Adede. My co-host Darren Collins is not on set today. He happens to be in Mombasa. He went there to do a comedy show. He will be back soon, and then we will continue with him on set and future episodes. But that said, we're good to go. We are very, very excited today to have Rhoda Kithure join us once again. She's been here before. She is one of the people who gave us a brief background around the mental health landscape in Kenya. Very, very useful information. For those who haven't watched that episode, I really, really do encourage you to do that. She also talked to us about gambling as part of gambling and mental health, highlighting some of the challenges people face when they bet. There's a lot of betting and gambling going on in the country. A lot of people think that they are on top of things, but it can get addictive and there could be side effects arising from that. A very interesting episode as well. I would encourage you to take time to view it if you haven't. But today, Rhoda is here to talk to us about sports and mental health. It didn't even occur to me that there could be, some sort of link. But everything, when you think about it, there is always some linkage to mental health. So interesting conversation coming up. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, a bit of housekeeping. Me and Mental is generally this platform where we are trying to share information on mental health in different ways. We have most of our content is housed on our website, which is www.meiammental.me. We also have a presence on social media. Some of this content, like the podcast, we'll find that on YouTube. And a few other audio channels. We request that you follow us, support us through subscribing to our channel, commenting, contributing your views, and reach out to us if you're interested in any particular discussion on mental health. Or you would even want to participate in some of these conversations as a guest. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you and see where that goes. So without much further ado, let us turn our attention to our guest, Rhoda Kithure. I'd just want to tell you that Rhoda is, among other things, a clinical psychologist, a rugby player. Let me not preempt. We'd allow her to tell her own story. So Rhoda, karibu sana once again. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And maybe to start us off, I just want to know, from the time you were last here to today, what have you been up to? Because I know it's very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's good to be here again. Thank you, Charles. I've been very much involved in the world of sports. I've been involved in two tournaments within the rugby spheres, and both for development teams, the under 20. We call them the development team. One for African tournament. The other one was a World Rugby Tournament trophy. So it's been a quite interesting couple of months since March. Yes, that's when we started the preparation. We just ended the tournament in July 30th.
So what have you been doing there? Because when you say we, there is the whole rugby team. It has coaches, players. You are yourself a a rugby player? Have you been playing? In what role?
So for my rugby journey, when I started transitioning into working with athletes, I needed to take a break. I took a break from playing and transitioned into coaching under 12, and I was working under 12 and under 18. So I trained in being a coach, level 1 coach, rugby coach, because I needed to understand the coaching spheres from being an athlete. So being involved in the rugby this couple of months, I've been working with them as a mental skills coach. At the same time, with still the same heart of being a clinical psychologist. So my focus has been on performance enhancement, on the psychological aspect of it, training them on skills to help them improve their performance, overcome obstacles affecting their performance, and also on the other side, focusing on their mental well-being. It's been quite engaging working with both the coaches and the athletes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we go back to the fact that you were at some point a rugby player yourself. Is it possible that when you were the rugby player, you noticed certain aspects of certain things about the game and how it was being played and team sports that made you think, I could contribute to this. I could add some value to this by addressing, the softer part of the human being. I mean,
That is very true. Even for me, when I joined rugby, I started as fun because we started at university when I was finishing my undergrad, and it's something wanted to try. But in the process, it became my coping mechanism for me. Because at the time I was doing my internship at Mathare Hospital. So after the long day, I would just enjoy letting it out in the field. And with time, the more you're speaking with others, because at the time now I just transitioned from university to club rugby. And many, many people shared the same story. It was from others, it's an escape. Others, it's a way of just getting away from the world and the sport. That sense of belonging, togetherness, and engaging in exercise, it was a good way of coping. And now within the same as you're conversing with others and the pressures associated with the sport, I noticed the patterns in terms of some of the common mental illnesses you'd hear, anxiety, depression, and many of them didn't know what was going on. So I realized it's a pattern. And that's when with time, I noticed I can do something about it. And then also I met one of the person who introduced me to rugby. She was working with a rehabilitation center for kids, and they're using sport for social change. So where they introduced rugby and they use life skills to help now to change behavior among these kids in rehab. So that was another entry for me. So I got interested. At the time, I didn't know where I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to be in the sport, working with athletes. I just didn't know how.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how my interest in sport got there and the transition. So I continued playing until for 3 years. I played for 3 years competitively at club level. And then now I slowly transitioned into coaching. Yes.
I'm just curious, rugby is, we don't hear much about female rugby or rugby, female rugby clubs and the female league. For the most part, when we think rugby, we think about this guys, and it's a very rowdy and tough game for. So ladies, we can't picture that. We can't picture ladies playing rugby. Maybe an interesting thing for me and maybe for our listeners or viewers would be, can you give us a brief, paint a picture a bit about what the rugby scene looks like for ladies in Kenya?
It's quite an interesting question. It's still growing, but it has been there.
Okay.
It has been there. Definitely, it's not the same attention given to the boys,
yes,
because they are generally started with the men, and people associate rugby with men. But it has been growing, even gaining internationally where Kenya is represented. In Kenya, we have 7th team for the women. We also have a 15th team. I will break it down later.
Yes.
Now it's highly competitive, but not very many clubs are being represented at the moment. At the time I was playing at the club level, right now the club is called Northern Suburbs, associated with KCB Rugby. We have different clubs represented in Rift Valley region, Western region, Nairobi region. So it's highly competitive, but not many, like we can say it's a big number, but you still many are getting into the spheres of rugby. We have had even ladies getting scholarships outside. We have ladies who have gone to Japan currently, representing, getting contracts internationally. We have others in the Middle East. So it's growing, but it has been there, but not getting so much attention. So it's highly competitive. We play with the same rules. We're even coached by the same coaches who train the men's team. And the intensity is the same. It's just the gender is different. So the same rule, the same coaching intensity, the aggression is still the same. Very high and quite thrilling. Actually, if we usually currently we have a 7th circuit going on, and ladies are represented there, and it's the same. It's getting the same time of play, same attention, and it's quite interesting. I think people should come in and support, and you'll get a very good show, very great performance when it comes to ladies.
And then here's a question. So how do the rest of the world relate to you when they hear she plays rugby?
It's I'm very within the sports world, it's very normal, but outside, unless I speak it out when I'm bringing sports aspect in the conversation, it's not usually something I say a lot, because the minute you say that, it's associated with aggressiveness. And you say rugby, you're given male attributes. There's that conversation even comes in. So I don't really talk about it much, but within the sports fraternity, I can comfortably talk about it because it's very normal. You're treated normally.
So what you're saying is, on the one hand, you would be very happy for us to come and cheer you and get comfortable with you and ladies being rugby players. But on the other hand, there is a bit of discomfort, possibly even stigmatization that comes from you pursuing rugby as a sport. Have I understood you correctly?
Yeah. So you gotta be comfortable in knowing it's something you love. And because we have as much as we have very talented ladies in the sport, the span by which they engage in the sport is very short, unless you're comfortable and you know yourself. So if you're not that, you find you can shy away from that. So no wonder we have we have so many athletes even in the rugby on the men's side who we know are they're celebs and people talk about it, they get endorsements. But now when it comes to the ladies, that's not something you see often. So that's where the challenge.
So ladies are shy about more because they're not sure how they'll be received and whether it would be challenging socially. They tend not to want to put it out there that they are rugby players and they really do enjoy the sport.
Yes.
And okay.
Yeah, but on the other side, that's why you find they're comfortable being in the sports world, because you're celebrated. You have a sense of belonging there, so you don't even have to shy away from speaking much about it.
Is there anything you'd like to tell people about that, about how to support ladies so that they are able to be comfortable playing their sports, but they are also just treated like, this is just any other sport. It could be netball, it could be volleyball. Is there any way of addressing that?
There's
challenge?
There's something, I'll just step away a little bit and give an example of the other day, the Australian rugby team, they gave out a speech, not even wrote a letter, even circulated through social media, because they wanted to normalize and say, even as we are the top of even of the table when it comes to representing rugby. Performance is very good for the ladies. We are well known all over, but the problem is they don't get the same resources the men's team gets. And they started a conversation on social media to a point of people started supporting, and it got attention of the union, the Australian Union. And right now they're getting a coach. They're getting even comes to consideration in terms of pay. So it's a conversation we needs to start even from us. Show that it's a sport like any other. Celebrate it like any other, like the men. And come see, don't judge, observe and see and engage with them. Because even also comes to the media, what kind of attention do we get for the ladies? It's not the same as the one we get for the men.
And perhaps as well, so they say charity begins at home, and in this sense, maybe a bit of housekeeping in terms of mindset and attitudes should begin with the ladies themselves, like finding a way of overcoming. Maybe it is justifiable to feel like you don't want to put yourself out there and get a backlash, but they also need to get to that point where they're willing to take that chance, because it's by taking that chance that then maybe the stigma begins to, you begin to fight the stigma.
That's true.
You're able to stand your ground more and more. And when people say they stand your ground, they say maybe there's something valuable in what you're doing, and therefore they so as a place to start, one of the interventions might be for the players themselves to get to that point where they feel like, I'll say it anyway, and whenever I meet some challenge, I'll find a way of addressing that challenge as opposed to not even dealing with it.
That is true. That is like the one beautiful thing about even the women's currently, because for the men's team right now, a while back we got relegated from the world rugby spheres for the sevens team. So the only team representing Kenya on a world platform right now is women team. Yeah. Currently, not the men's team, not even the under 20, because this one comes in. This one because we are the ones who are hosting. We got that privilege of being in the tournament. But currently, the only team representing Kenya on a world platform is the women's team.
Okay.
So it's a big boost. And one thing is, when ladies, you see them playing, they give their best, no matter what is placed, the obstacles. They know how to overcome obstacles, overcoming adversity when they face. So the passion they play the game with, it's something worth watching and supporting. So it's still working around on how bringing that on board, even for the ladies, but it's a growing sport worldwide. It's even, as you've seen, like even in the spheres of football, we just had the World Cup for women, and the media follow-up and the attention it got. So we are growing. For me, okay. I'm looking at the positive side. We are growing, and the more we grow, the more now they get the same resources the men team get the support.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have maybe we will come down to culture, sports and culture, the cultures around sports, a little further down in this conversation. But rugby also has its culture, right? And that culture could also be contributing sometimes to that if it's females,
mm-hmm.
and then you consider, do they operate within that same culture? And you're thinking, whoa, because the rugby culture is, like I said, it's very masculine, it's rowdy, it's and so
that gladiator way of that is very true, because you find the words I said you used is you're strong, you can overcome. That's the way people see you. So when they see you expressing even emotions, it's some type of emotion, that's seen as weakness.
Yes.
And seen as weakness, that's not something which is celebrated within what is regarded as the strength, how you're observed, how you're perceived. So the culture goes, it's both in the men's team and both in the female. So despite the gender, attributes are the same.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
So that definitely affects health-seeking behavior. You find if I come speak up and say, I'm struggling with depression, with anxiety, that stigma is still there associated with that's weakness. And that will affect my performance. That will affect even how I'm seen in the field. Even when I make a mistake in the field, it will be associated with this illness I'm struggling with this emotion I'm struggling with. It just comes out automatically. So you find now many would rather just, let me be quiet, let me not speak much about it, and let me just give my best and just push.
I see.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to an interesting, when you talk about culture, maybe we can even go as far as saying it's an expectation. So many of us expect athletes to be tough, to be made of steel, to be able to, there's, those feats. If you're Kipchoge, Eliud, then, you have to be made of steel to consistently achieve the things he is. Faith Kipyegon, Manyala, that's in there. And then now when you have people like now, again, rugby, classic, more classically within spaces like rugby, which are very adversarial and, so what you expect is that this person is, first of all, there is a pressure on them to perform. But secondly, they have to be made of, they're not humans almost, they're superhuman. That's why we deify them, we make them heroes, we turn them into this larger than life being. So we don't want them to be like us. What do you say to that? What do you say to those, the expectations and the incredible pressure that we place on athletes?
In some way, that affects them. That affects them even in terms of how they cope. Well, and as I said before, seeking help when you're struggling with a condition or even an illness, or you're struggling with something, that affects them because there's this expectation. So let me give you an example. This is how it's seen. When someone is playing, when a rugby, have you ever been to a rugby game? Yes. And you've seen when there's high impact, the crowd, the way it cheers. When that aggressive behavior is seen, when high impact, when someone makes a run, the tackles, actually those hard tackles, when they happen, the crowd cheers. And even the athlete themselves, that excites them. It excites them so much to a point of you want that more because the reaction is a reward. So, but now when that is limited, you don't get the same reaction. You get booing. People start calling you names. They insult you. The crowd doesn't care. They want a performance. That's what they want from you. And there's this expectation we have of you. And you need to fit into that. So you find if someone doesn't know themselves, they're not aware of how that is affecting them, it also affects their performance. And health-wise, it affects them. Because the crowd wants a good show. And you gotta give it. And that's the way it is. So as I've said, it's that expectation, they live into it. And also when it comes to the coaches, the technical support, they have that kind of pressure also. They go through that. So there's that expectation of the athlete. No matter what, you have to deliver this performance. I don't know how, but I've given you all the resources. I don't know how you handle this, manage to handle the pressure. You're calling yourself an athlete. You've gotten a chance of participating in this tournament, in this competition. You have to deliver. And if you don't deliver, definitely there are consequences. You're going to lose, but also consequences of you missing a sport to play again. So it's a circle. And it continues going on and on and on. And that pressure, when you're getting in the sport, you are aware of it. But now it's something which many don't notice until you're in it.
So here's an interesting thought. So there's some people who are very sensitive in nature. They could be, like now you're saying about a crowd, depending on what, when they do something and how the crowd reacts to them, it cuts them to the quick if it's negative. There are others who, maybe by some sort of good luck or however they are constituted, it doesn't matter too much. They're more grounded. So they may be, a little tougher, so to speak. Now, the assumption, again, we generally make about sports people is that, or even soldiers or police or people who do certain types of things, is that when you're in that space, you are a tough person. You can take anything. There's nothing that can break you. We see you in a uniform, or we see you out there playing rugby. We assume that you are as tough as you look internally.
That's true.
Isn't it? So what then tends to happen is if you are a sensitive person, but you don't look sensitive, and you're in a sport where sensitivity is not particularly even thought of or encouraged, you are most likely to be the person who eventually suffers from gets into mental health challenges, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which would affect not just you as an individual, but your performance in the sports. Right? Yeah. I can see how that can become a never-ending cycle. The assumption, again, like I said, is you see a guy, he's built a certain way, he looks like an oak tree. He is in this sports where everybody assumes that you should be as tough as a tank, and therefore his attitude should match the sports and also how he looks. We don't dare to take care of the person inside.
No, most of the time you find that's why recently there's been an increase in the interest of the mental health of athletes, because as you've said, yes, I've trained, I go to the gym, I go to the field, I train. The way I'm built physically, I can handle anything. The skills I'm getting, I can execute my skills well. But now the main challenge comes in. What about the mind of this athlete, the psychological well-being of this athlete? Have you looked at it? What kind of even when you look, there's something we say like it's a biopsychosocial model where I'm looking at the biological makeup, I'm looking at the genetics, I'm looking at your family history. I'm also looking at your psychological. How do you cope with challenges, with adversity? How are you? How is your personality? What personality do you have? And then I'm looking at the social aspect, the cultural. Those are things which have been lacking for the longest time. And that's what now it's affecting us. It's not giving us an edge when we compete at an international level. Because yes, you physically am equipped. But now let's come to the field. I don't know how to handle this kind of the crowd, the pressure, the shouts. I'm getting carried away. It's a distraction. And now when I get back to the game, I'm making mistakes because I've gotten distracted. Split second, I'm prone even to injury because of that. So these are things we don't pay attention to.
And that is where you come in.
Yes, that's where now my role comes in.
That is where you thought this is where my contribution would be.
It took me a while to understand, because at first I came in as I was training, I was pursuing my master's in clinical psychology. I'd said, let me go see what value do I add in the sport? And along the way, when I was interacting, I'm training, coaching, I saw the gap, and I was reading, I realized this is where, even comes to Kenya in our sports, this is where we are lacking. What kind of environment are we providing for these athletes to thrive, to manage? Are they even aware it's affecting them? Because you find that you have, like the way we were talking earlier about the nerves, you're anxious when getting to the game. So your game takes time to pick. And then by the time you're picking, you find you've been scored, or even something has happened. And then the crowd is shouting, or even it's booing you. You find you're distracted. You don't know how to handle that. You start making mistakes. You now start blaming yourself. And it affects your performance. It affects how you look at yourself. That's why I always, any athlete, the first day I interact with them, I tell them, the one part is this sport can make you or break you. So my role coming here is to ensure it doesn't break you, makes you a better person, grow your skills, because the same skills you're getting in the sport, you can apply them outside. So I help them in that process. By the time we are finishing, let's say a tournament, or even my work with this team, I'm helping you transition all these skills, apply them outside, because they're critical. Not many people have the potential of working under high levels of pressure, and you're executing everything as it's expected. You're giving your best. You're involving your body physically, you're involved, mind, cognitively, you're involved, and you're performing at your best and delivering. That's not skill. Not many people have that. And it's the same skill in the job market. It's quite needed. So it's valuable. But now for me, my work is, I wanted to bring that to them, create the awareness, create even for the coaches, for the management to see what value empowering these athletes, creating awareness on their mental well-being, how it can grow the sport and also grow the athletes.
So how exactly do you do it? Suppose let's take the tournaments you've been involved in. How are you going about it? Typically, how do you engage the athletes? How do you engage the coaches? How do you make sure that you're actually impactful?
So as I said earlier, I trained to understand the coaching world, and I worked with the under 12 and under 18 for a period of close to 2 years, coaching, because the mentor, the person who introduced me to coaching, told me, for you to understand the athlete, you need to start understanding this child who is getting in the game, understand the mind of the athlete from a coaching perspective before now you bring the psychological aspect. So I'm understanding how the skills, they're acquiring the skills, how the coaching programs they go, how these coaches create that program to help the player develop in their skills. So from there, now that helps me a lot. During this tournament, I was working with coaches, understanding what's the game plan they're creating, understanding how they want, the kind of delivery they want from the players. So understanding that, with them when they're training in the field. So there's a period where they're being trained on this game plan they'll be using during the game. They're acquiring this new skill. So when I see the player is not executing well, and I can see the frustration, so I'm observing their behavior in the field, and I know the coach what the kind of expectation they want, the performance indicators they want from these players. So if this player is not reaching that, that's where I intervene. And now the coaches, even themselves, they come and tell me, this player, the performance has dropped. So I'm well equipped enough to see, we call it like technically, what is preventing this player from acquiring the skills? You've been training in and out 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but you still can't get this skill. Why? Inside the field, I'm seeing you're dropping balls, you're making mistakes that day. What is going on? So I'm observing them when they're in the field. That's why I see them. And from there, when I pick it up, I address it on an individual basis. What happened? I'm tracking them. Comes to physically, your speed has dropped. Used to run at this level of speed, but it has dropped. What is happening? So when I'm in them in the field, they are comfortable. They're not feeling, you're part and parcel of the team. So it's not invasive. They're not feeling like when you're working together, like I'm sick. No, I'm telling them my focus is to help you become better, improve your skill, perform better. So with time, and then I do trainings, mental skills training sessions now away from the field.
So sorry, just to go back to when you're in the field. So when you're in the field, you're part of the technical bench.
Yes, for me.
And you just observe.
I observe.
You just let the coach do his thing,
yes.
train, you're just observing.
Yes.
At that point, do you also contribute, or for the most part, it's the coach's space?
It's the coach's space. I observe, and then once, let's say they've taken a break, I come in, and if I see something which is of concern, I have a conversation with the coach. And if it's input needed, I contribute and tell them. And other time they come and talk to me, they tell me, but yesterday, like in the last 3 days, this has been happening. What's your input? And I support there. But most of the time, my work is observation and see what can I do to improve. And now before that, I always do assessment. For me, assessment is part and parcel of my work, because with assessment informs me to understand the player. As I mentioned before,
what is assessment?
It's
What type of assessment are you referring to?
The assessment is, I mentioned before about the biopsychosocial model. I want to understand this player on the biological aspect of it. I understand your family setup, social setup, education background, because that's also a great input. I'm looking at psychologically, what's your personality? I'm looking at what's the coping skills this athlete has. because it helps me understand the obstacles you're facing. How do you overcome? Do you have that ability? I'm also screening for even any presence of a mental illness. And mainly I assess even for anxiety, for depression, because these factors affect the performance. And if this athlete is not aware of them, they can get it's frustrating when you're doing something and you're wondering. Some of them, they come and say, I don't understand why my performance has dropped. And it's quite frustrating. And every time you're trying, you see them training, they put in the work, they're the first one to reach the field, training their but now the performance is going down every time. So when I do the assessment, I help them map out where is the problem.
Okay.
And then now, because of confidentiality, some of the results I don't share with it's me and the athlete. Because even for this athlete, I need to I know the stigma associated. The stigma is there. So to protect you and prevent more harm coming to you, I really don't share some of the information. But I help you cope. I help you improve your performance as you're getting better.
So do you share with the athlete? Do they become aware, or do you even withhold that from the athlete themselves? Is there a risk in sharing some of that information with the athlete himself?
Yeah, sometimes it's a risk because you assess and see, is this athlete ready to get these results? Some of them they have been diagnosed before, and you find they are trying to avoid. So when you share with them, and through the assessment, I realize they are aware of this condition, and now I help them cope. And I see, is this sport even affecting you further, or can you cope with this situation? So others, I just share and show them. I slowly psychoeducate them before I share the results.
I see.
Yes. So psychoeducate them, show them how it's affecting, bring awareness to the athlete, and you find now my involvement with them is on it's continuous on even daily basis when I'm in the field with them, when they're at the camp. So you find I psychoeducate them. So by the time I'm sharing this information, there is no resistance. You're seeing how it's quite engaging. And since it's something new, it's still very new in Kenya. Outside Kenya, it's there. It's a practice which has been there for more than 20 years. But in Kenya, it's something new. So I have to be careful in how I'm bringing it out.
Because everything you do right now, it's like you're creating the framework first for people to even understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
You're a pioneer. So even finding space to be accommodated, you must create that space. So there's a little bit of making sure everybody is okay and comfortable with your contribution.
Yes.
And also that they see value. Over and above now, you actually doing your thing.
Yes. So the one thing people see is they don't see the other part of the mental well-being. My focus mostly is on the performance, because I know for performance, the results will be seen. And that's what they're looking at. So that's my buy-in. That's the value. But on the other side, I don't really show up on these other issues I'm tackling here at the back end.
So those would typically be the things that actually benefit the player for the long haul.
Yeah.
The things that help with addressing, strengthening them where they're strong, helping them manage some of their personal issues, but they're more personal to the player.
Yeah.
And they're things that sort of heal them for the long haul. They're not associated they're indirectly associated with achieving results.
Yeah.
But there's a longer term, sort of outlook.
Yes.
It's the person now you're dealing with.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So get back to what you're saying. So you assess them when they're on the field, you observe them. So you have the benefit of the assessment results. Now you observe them against the strategy, the coach's strategy, to see how they are performing. And then when you have an opportunity sometimes to talk to the coaches, you address the coaches on certain issues, but you will find time also, sessions with the athletes, with the sportsmen.
That's mandatory.
Okay.
Yes.
What do you do when now that you find time with them?
So we have as I said, I have the scheduled group sessions where it's more of training. You are going through the techniques to help them in their performance. And that is separate. But now for the individual session, I come in and I call the athlete and tell them we're having this session. The beauty of it, this is what I do. Before I start having individual sessions, I do a lot of psychoeducation. So I'm slowly getting out of that stigma. I'm slowly lowering the defenses, the resistance. So I'm talking about it. We are in session.
So I'm going to interject.
Yeah.
We may be assuming that people know what psychoeducation is. Do you need?
So psychoeducation is basically when I'm just teaching them about the common mental health illnesses. I'm teaching about some psychological aspect and factors which may affect their game. I'm talking about, let's say in the sports world, let's say after a loss, after this team has lost a game, we sit down and we process with them, and I'm telling them how these may be affecting, these were some of the things affecting your performance this day in terms of managing pressure, fear of failure, factors like those. So that's now what we call psychoeducation. I'm training them on that, impacting them and even educating them, usually educating them.
They get to know more about their feelings,
yes,
more about their thoughts, more about the things that could be happening inside of them, yes, when they are engaging in their sports and with the world. So whenever something happens, they're able to refer back and say, oh, what I'm going through right now is yes, this. I'm feeling like right now I'm grieving, for instance, the loss of the sports, but it's not the end of the world. It was just an event. So that's what you're trying to do through the psychoeducation,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes. So I slowly, with time, before individual session, this is what I do. So by the time now they're aware of it, you find, as you said, an athlete after a game may come and tell me, they usually call us coach. They say, coach, something happened, and they talk to you about it. For me, that's an entry to them. And then the more they talk and they see it's helping, the more now they reach out, even without me reaching out to them. In the field during coaching and when they're doing their training session, they realize I've been making so many mistakes today, and they can't understand why. So there, it's another entry. You tell them this is not your performance usually. What happened? And they tell me, can I schedule a session with you? So, but now by the continuous, I even takes like 2 months, because the period I have with them is very short. Because let's say we are training between Friday to Sunday on a weekly basis. So it can take even 2 months, the psychoeducation. But that 2 months for me, my goal is, I want to create awareness for them to be aware what is going on inside them psychologically. How is some of these issues affecting them? How are they balancing school? Because most of them are in school, school and the sport. Are you timing yourself? You're looking at burnout, mental fatigue. Most of them go because you've been the training for so long. It's the same routine. So when I create awareness on these issues, they start becoming aware of them. They start noticing them. And that's when now I start the individual session now, because there's less resistance. They're the ones actually reaching out. And then even the ones who are resistant, I find out on how to bring them on board. So yeah, it's a process.
And the coaches, do they support you? Do they fully support your endeavors? Some of them, do they resist? Do they think you're making our athletes become sissies? All this focusing on emotions and nini. Is there, do you get?
That's a tricky one. All I can say is for the longest time, our coaching culture has been, when you come in the field, you leave your problems at the gate. You get in the field. That has been the culture for the longest time.
Yes.
Our coaches have gone through the same training. They were coached they played in the same setup.
I was told, this is an aside, but so there was a time when NYS was mandatory for university people going to campus. I think a couple of years way back. And then there was this, so on the day of reporting, so you would come, you dressed a certain way. Some people would dress in girls with in high heels and what. You get to the gate. You're supposed to strip yourself of all those things.
Acha
You
uko
forget,
nje.
you leave yourself at the
Yes.
gate because once you're in there, you become a number.
Your identity just gets lost along the way.
So,
Yes.
so I don't know whether that is a sort of, of course, that one is very exaggerated, but it's probably the same approach to coaching. Like, listen, from now on, you're a goalkeeper.
Atujui, when you get in the gate is there.
Yes.
Ukiingia kwa hii gate, the field, the training grounds, iko hapo, the gym, you leave all that, you
Yes.
come do the work you're expected to do here. So they have grown in that culture.
Mm-hmm.
They've been socialized like that. So you find it's much easier changing this mindset of these young athletes compared to the coaches and that buying. Some of them along the way, they have been exposed with interaction with the international coaches. We have had a couple of international, even sports psychologists coming to support but for a short period and they leave. So we have had some coaches exposed to that. But still, you can't beat this socialization you've gone through where you're told you got to be tough. And toughness is no matter what, you execute your skills. I'm equipping you with these skills. I need to see the delivery. So this part you're talking about, emotions, anxiety, a fear of failure, these personality issues, we don't know that. We want you to perform. So I had to, that was the major challenge. And I struggled with that for a very long time until around, I remember the first breakthrough was back in 2021 because the exposure, training, I'm observing, I'm coaching. I had to find what's my buy-in because if I come through the clinical aspect, I'll not get reception. I'll be blocked at the gate. What are you bringing here? And most of them, they know. They're aware of it. But
the coaches.
Yeah, they're aware of it. But the thing is, how do we now marry these things together? Because how do we accept this? This is the way we see our worldview is like this. So you're bringing this other aspect in. And how can that work? So for me, I decided, let me start with the players but also at the same time, slowly I'm bringing awareness. When the coach, when you're in let's say a meeting and they're talking, now we are looking at the performance of players. That's where, so I look for moments on where to come in and bring that in. I communicate with them. I've worked with teams where the coaches are in the program, which is, for me, it's a plus.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's so fantastic because they're part and parcel of the team. They listen to some of they see the players talking about these issues and they see a different side of players they never saw. And for me, that's a breakthrough. So I say it's a culture, the way people have been socialized. I have to find how I slowly bring this in. So I'm still growing. I'm very positive, but it's not easy. It's not very easy.
Alongside that, so I'm assuming that the people you've been involved with in the recent past, it's mostly like male teams.
Yeah.
Maybe male coaches as well. And then you're the odd lady there.
Yeah.
And then you're the old lady talking about soft things like depression and CG. How does that work?
Still very.
You're outnumbered.
Yeah, I'm outnumbered.
Outgunned.
Yes, and the definite we have this aspect of a woman associated with softness and these emotions.
Yes.
You saw how they label them. So one most of the times I come in and tell them, everybody, we all express emotions. It's just we express them differently. So yes, I'm usually the odd one out. It's not easy, but the one thing is there's the respect of me being a former rugby player. That respect gives me an entry because I understand the language of the sport, and it's one thing which I realized gave me strength because I understand the language. I go through all the training even of coaches. I'm even in sessions when they're coaching. So understanding language helps me talk their language. So helps me now, I don't talk when even I'm talking about issues regarding mental health and performance. I'm talking the language of the coaches. That has been my breakthrough. That is one thing which has helped me so much, where you find now they're not looking at, yes, you're the female. We don't come talking about, no, I talk their language. When I'm coming and talking about, let's say we're executing a game plan. So I internalize the game plan with these concepts I'm bringing in. So when I talk that language, that respect comes in. They listen. Because for me, I want to, even though it's 20 minutes it's 10 minutes. At least I've impacted. I've helped to understand something. So I have to bring in the language of mental health, of mental skills coaching with the language of the sport.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's let's say there's a new skill you're learning today. You're talking about, let's say, like basics in terms of rugby. You're passing the ball, the tackling part of it. So you marry each other there. You tell them. So let's say how can I put it? I'm trying to see how I can give an example. Mm-hmm. But generally is I use the language of the coaching to now bring in the language of the mental health. So the minute I get that buy-in, you find it's so much easier to talk. So yes, it's a challenge. It's a male dominated world. But also at the same time for me, I realized it's where the challenge is because of that culture, of the stigma of even talking about it. You find many males are suffering. And it's one challenge, by the way. Many of them are suffering without talking. And my focus, even on my paper is focused on the rehabilitation period after injury. Rugby is a contact sport, and injury, high chances you get injury. Some of them are career-ending injury. Others you'll be out for a year or 6 months. So for me, I was looking at the wellness of the athlete during this period when they are going through rehabilitation. What is happening? What's the support system? How are they coping? So I realized the majority struggle. And it affects their return to play period. So that was my other entry now on the well-being of the athletes. These are young athletes. You're 20 years old. You've gotten an injury which has taken you out for a year. So meaning, what's your relevance even in the support you're getting from the club? You're away from your sport for a very long time. How is that affecting you? And this is the passion. This is a game you love.
So I have a question around that. It just occurred to me that if I'm 20 and I have invested quite a bit in the sport, and maybe my whole sense of identity and well-being is, around sport, and then unluckily I encounter an injury and I'm out of commission for a period. During that time, what am I?
Thank you. You don't know who you are. You're trying to find yourself, and you're no longer and even others, you're no longer in the field with others. You don't share the same things. So you find this confusion here. It's where the challenge comes in. So my work comes in to help them. There's something we call injury-related growth. So when you're away from the sport, how can I help you find who you are as a person away from the sport? And you find by the time this individual is getting back to the sport, you have this whole new identity, this whole new person you've become, where you can they become even better than they were before. But the challenge is not many go through that. Not many are aware because, as you've said, the identity is attached to the sport. Some of them, they started playing. This is the sport teachers give them scholarship, starting from primary school, high school. And then you hear this is something which has changed your livelihood, your growth, even your family. And then now, within a minute, it's gone. Who am I now? Who can I call myself? So you find many of them, that is one challenge. So when I saw this, and for me, it's many, I could see players who have gotten injured and they're away, and you see even physically, it's challenging them. Socially, they become withdrawn.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to show up.
Thank you.
With crutches and sit the sidelines and, just sort of bringing all this.
Thank you. And another challenge, men really don't know how to handle negative emotions.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. And now this is the general population. Now bring it to the sports world. Zero. They don't know how even to talk to you. So it's very uncomfortable. So they feel much comfortable withdrawing from these fears. And then now it's affecting, am I still in school? Even movement is affecting. And then the anxiety of, will I be able to go back to play again? Will I be the same person I used to be? The position you used to hold, it's gone. Will I become that person again? So all these fears, if not addressed well, they end up impacting this athlete way later. You find there are others who navigate so well. But now majority, they struggle. And as I said, injury, even in any sport, especially this contact sport, is inevitable. It's part and parcel of the sport.
Personally.
Yeah.
I have a question, which is around that. Look, we have team sports, and team sports have the certain strengths when you're participating in team sports. There are certain benefits, certain things that come to you, which are good. Then there are also challenges associated with team sports. And then you also have the athletes who are in, I don't know what the term would be, the individual sports.
Individual sports,
yes, yeah. Like say you're a tennis player, I suppose, or you're
the athletes,
a runner.
Yes, thank you.
So, firstly, would you just highlight some of the, when you're talking about team sports and things like contact sports, some of the risk of injury are much higher, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, because there's a lot of movement. Some of the benefits perhaps would be things like just learning how to operate within a team.
Yes.
But would you just highlight, try and see the differences, especially from a mental health standpoint, the good, the bad, the ugly?
Now, for what can I say, for the team sport, which is one sport now, for me, I've been very much involved in team sports. So you look, there's definitely group dynamics, knowing how to navigate them. Some people, like an example of a child who you've been an only child, growing up as an only child. And then you come here, you're no longer the center of attention in terms to this team sport. And you have to navigate and understand how to manage and cope with others, work with others. It brings out social skills. It brings out even how you can even seeking help from others, supporting each other, working in those. So team sport grows that team dynamic, the group dynamics, brings out the social skill aspect, helps you even, brings out the leadership in the team. Some of the things they learn, the team leadership. You're looking of even coachability, ability of even the player. As a team, supporting each other within the sport. When you're going through challenges, you find you're lifting each other up. Those are some of the dynamics I really enjoyed during this period when I could see even the player has made a mistake inside the field. Outside, the coach is very mad. It's like, what kind of mistakes are you doing? It's going to cost us. But inside the field, the players come together and they tell each other, we got your back. Relax, calm you down. You understand the aspect of like that family setup comes to team sport, brings a sense of belonging. Very key when it comes to team sport. When no matter what, I have people who have got my back. Yes.
I would imagine there's some lifelong friendships that I usually they start on the field.
Yes.
And guys just remain mates for life, that sort of thing.
And that's the thing, you're with inside the field. This is the one component about when it comes to now, let's say even football, rugby. Inside the field, you're the most vulnerable. Your emotions are raw, they're out there. You're expressing yourself inside the field. And then you're depending on the support of your players next to you to help you overcome all this. That bonding it's lifelong. So you have that nature of being yourself and knowing I can rely on the next man here. So if there's a lack of trust within the team, that is gone. So you find mental toughness comes in there with team sport because you're challenging each other. So that's the side of the other side of team sport. On the other side, you find it brings out the challenge of, as I said, anxiety. You no longer belong. You're different from others, and you don't know how to navigate this. And you find there are others, especially if someone has an underlying mental condition, and you feel I'm an outsider. And if the others don't understand me, I don't fit in. I don't find I belong in this setup, and that can affect you even more. That's the other side of team sport. You find, as I said earlier, I'm an only child. I come in this sport. I'm trying to get that attention, and that is not there. It's we are one team, and you don't know how to navigate this. You find these challenges. That's some of the things I could see. I used to tell them, you need to learn how. So if you're not ready to learn the skills, the social skills of working with others, it affects you. And you find even you've dropped out and withdraw from people. Other people don't know how to, that competitive nature. You don't know how to handle it. So one thing is the team sport, it highlights some of the weaknesses people don't know about. But now, you having the presence of even a coach who understands these dynamics, or even a psychologist within that setup, helps you navigate. But if there is nothing like that, you find you lose so many people, even talented young people, who don't have these life skills on how to manage. Our team sports also helps develop the life skills, managing emotions. As I said earlier, conflict resolution. The conflict is definite because the dynamics are there. So those are the things. So if you're not supported in navigating, in resolving these conflicts, it affects you negatively. But if you have that, it's okay, you grow. Now, coming on the other part of...
I suppose one of the things I also see is incredible discipline. Sometimes I see the thing about having to wake up at every morning to train, to keep time, to observe rules and regulations within the sport, to sometimes even take... I see instances where, say, a referee makes a decision which might seem unfair to one side or the other, but you have to take it in. You have to take it in and still say it is the referee. That decision is okay, regardless of what it's making you feel like. You manage to control yourself. So things like self-control, things like discipline become things you can learn from participating in those.
Yeah, discipline is key. Discipline, even the first thing, the whole conversation, every time, even in training, discipline is key because it helps you even respect authority, respect your fellow athletes, respect the decision of the referee, not taking it personally. When you've been handed in a yellow card, you've told there's an offense, and you start insulting, even going against the referee, that will cost you. So the ability to respect the decisions made by the referee and step away. And also with discipline, it helps you learn the rules and know how to navigate. So sports helps us learn so many skills, which not only helps us personally, but also in the work environment, in the school environment. Mm-hmm. I always tell them the one thing is the ability to navigate. You're there in psychologically, mentally, you're assessing the field, you're looking at the gaps, you're looking at the opponent, and at the same time physically you're involved. That level of engagement, that's high level of thinking. That's not easily adopted by just anyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you can take that and take it outside in maybe academics, or if you're working in work environment, you navigate so well. The problem is now there becomes, after you've learned this, not much support is given to know how you can navigate and see. By the way, I don't have to be these, before they used to be called jocks. You're not very good in performance. Mm-hmm. We just need you to have this grade and you can go perform. But I keep on telling them, the fact is you have this ability of doing this in the field. You can transfer these skills in class and remove these, what can I say?
It's a label.
That label. Attached to that and show you can excel in different areas. Yeah. So.
Yeah, interesting. I've also thought about something else, which is just the ability to bounce in terms of coping with adversity. If you're in let's say there's a tournament or something, throughout the tournament, there'll be instances where you lose, you win, you lose, you win, but you hang in there. You hang in till the end of the tournament. And therefore you begin to see maybe sometimes losses as events, losses as part of life, but winning as events, leading. It has it doesn't say too much about who you are, other than maybe you then being able to assess, did we have the correct skills? Did we do the right things? And you can improve on those. So even your mindset about winning, losing, and all those things can can be improved incredibly through sports.
Yes, it can. But now the main thing is when you're aware. Remember when I said I do assessment? I assess actually how do you cope with adversity. I assess the level. When I assess and realized there is a gap there, so I work with you in helping you grow this. Because when you lose, how do you handle loss? One thing I came to realize, not many people know how to handle losses. They know how to handle a win. But when this failure comes in, when this loss comes in, you've been having a winning streak, and then you have this loss. It sets you back. So one thing is you need to learning how to lose and learn from there so that you can actually now get back to winning. That is one thing not many people have. So when you have that skill and you learn it, it helps you even outside. Helps you even when, let's say, you've lost, even not only that you've lost a loved one, you've lost a job, that kind of loss, you are equipped enough to know how to handle and accept it's part of life. I'm not this perfect. These events happen, but how do I navigate through them? How do I recover? How do I heal? Get it back.
And what happens to the guys who are on a losing streak?
I
know. I'm making light of it, but it's quite challenging, isn't it? If for instance, throughout a tournament, you don't. You've just been losing, and you're losing ground. You're losing the support of your fans, and but you're supposed to hang in there and turn this thing around.
Let me give an example, very good one. In the last tournament, it's the first time we're having this group of young players engaging in such an international. It was high level pressure, high level of tournament, which no one has ever engaged. So the first two competitions we lost. The first one, it was a tough one. We had this hope of we could win, but at the last minute we couldn't. And I remember how the players took in the results. It was very hard, very tough, because we lost the chances of even being at the top three. So the second match comes in. They for the first 40 minutes, we were doing very well. The other 40 minutes, things just didn't work out for us. This was a tough one. So what we did is, because we understood, the more you put pressure, the more it will even break them. So that's the one part where I employed the mindfulness techniques to help them relax and look at themselves and understand the kind of level we are playing at. Bring that awareness, bring down overconfidence, because athletes, sometimes they can become overconfident. You look at a team and you're like, but you don't look at what skill do you have. So one other thing is I usually do an individual performance analysis. So I look at you and let's say you're playing, your opponent is a number 8 and you're number 8. So what skill do you have? And let's look at this opponent, because it's in social media, it's in their pages. So you look at your skill level and understand the reason why you didn't perform so well. These were some of the challenges. So you bring that to their awareness. I don't come in and tell them it's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. It's tough. You're losing. You need to bring your best. But what is your best? Do you know what you're capable of doing? So these are some of the things. You use the loss as a learning lesson. You don't come and put them down when they're already down. No, I bring it out. Even sometimes I tell them, I want you to sit in that loss. How does it feel? So this is how you confront your emotions, because these are not emotions and these are emotions related to the loss. I tell them, I want you to see, it's very uncomfortable. Some of them resist, and I'm telling them, no, you gotta sit in that, because if you don't feel how it feels, you're not gonna go past that loss. So after that, the third tournament, we won the last minute. We pushed it till we won that tournament. At least by the time we were ending, we had only won one game, but it was a learning lesson. For them, by the time they are finishing, I was telling them, we are looking at a loss. Look at it as you've had this exposure. What do you learn from it? So it becomes a learning lesson. You don't sit down and put yourself down because you've lost. No. It's not going to be okay. I don't tell them it's going to be okay. No. I don't use those words. I use it as sit down in that loss. Let the loss become a learning lesson. What did you see? Become even aware. Watch the game again and see yourself. How are you performing? How can you become better? Because if they don't do that, you end up now there, instead of now going up, performance going up, it goes down. So that's how.
Is there ever anything like a loss that you would say it's a win? So it's a loss where you performed at your best, maybe. Guys did fantastically well. They lost in terms of the scores, but you walk out of that place feeling like, yeah, we lost, but
we did good.
We did good. And are there situations like that? And do the players usually also feel like that sometimes, or is that a really rare occurrence?
Yes, they're there, very many. But most of them, it's even how the athlete perceive a loss. If you have these expectations, so like let me give an example. We are facing the team we faced the team which won the tournament overall. It was Spain. We faced them in our second match, and the players give their best. These are players, the opponent, these are people who have gotten the exposure. They've been training for longer periods. They've been even together training for longer. So they had all things put in place. Now comes us. We had a very short, but not an excuse, but we looked at the abilities we had, but we pushed. We gave them a much of the performance was beautiful despite the loss. So it's now helping the players see, look at yourself, what you give. You have this ability. You're able to hold on. You didn't, the scores are not reading 80 something. No, you push. So it helps them now look at yourself. So that's the part which comes in with analyzing this performance. You talk to them and tell them, look at yourself, the growth, look at the carries you had, look at the tackles you made, look at this. So that brings confidence in them. But if you just leave them like that, any loss to an athlete for them, if they're not aware and they're not equipped to handle this, it puts them down. They don't see what they did. So yes, we have such matches, but you got to talk to them about it. Bring that. Let them see. Compared to this other game, this game, we won, but you didn't show up much. But this game, you showed up. Look at your statistics. They're showing improvement. So you constantly bring that to their awareness. That's when now they embrace and start working and get confidence. Their self-confidence boosts. The doubts lessen and a confidence in their abilities boosts. So you find even now they're interested now to even work more, work on their abilities, do their training, the discipline. Even you find the next day, I could find others at 6, the players in the gym, training. They're with their books, they're analyzing the game plan as they're preparing for the next game. So that's the beauty of now when, yes, we have lost, but we gave it their best. So that's why we use this term of don't look at the outcome of winning. Look at, within this game, did you give your best? And what does your best look like? Can you define your best?
Yeah, that's a very good way of looking at it. Yes. It gives you some very brilliant framework for working. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on what the good, the bad, the ugly of operating of individual sports? People in the individuals. What are some of the things they benefit from being in that space, but also these challenges they encounter? Because that's very different from, obviously, very, very different dynamic from team sports.
Yeah. So there's one thing is, unlike you see the team sport, even when you lose, even when you go through an event, we are going through it as a team. You're feeling, and as humans, we want that support system. So bring this athlete and you find it's only you and even the technical, maybe with your coach, you don't have a support system. Not only even at home, let's even bring it here. Those are some of the challenges you find when you go. Let's say you've traveled, you've gone to, let me give an example of now they're in Budapest. Go there, you're traveling alone like that. Although they traveled as a team, but you find you're different cultures, you're navigating all these things with no one to share how you're feeling with. No one is going through the same experience as you. Unlike a team sport where when they travel, you find you've gotten near to a new location. Let's say you've traveled to South Africa, Namibia, and when you get there as a team, there's that debrief as a team. How are you How are you feeling? How's the new environment? You navigate this with the team. Individual sports, you're going through this alone. So unless you have a team, and meaning for you to have this big team, resources have to be there. So if you don't have those resources, you find the struggle in navigating. So that's one of the challenges. No support system to share all this. So even facing the media, you're facing the media alone. You're facing the crowds alone. So there's that aspect, which is a challenge.
It can be like very lonely and very
Yes.
terrifyingly so,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
I can imagine maybe you're running, you're by yourself, you're representing Kenya, and maybe you're not performing very well and everybody's booing.
Yeah.
And it just hits you. It's all directed at you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And now you're not equipped enough, psychologically equipped enough to know how to handle this. You don't have that kind of support system. So that becomes a challenge. That's why you find in other countries, you find these athletes traveling with the nutritionist, with the psychologist, with the coach, with your physiotherapist. You have this team and you've brought them together. They're not only serving their roles, they're also part of your support system. Others you find they're traveling because they have resources. They travel with family. When I'm going with my family. And when I'm there, I know that they are supporting me. So you find, but now what about these athletes who don't have those resources? Some of the challenges. The good part of it is when you're competing, it's you can set, you're not relying on others. Let's say if something goes wrong, it's me. So I have to give my best. It pushes you to know I'm not relying on others to become the best. In team sport, you have to be the same level. You can't be the best here and you have this person not doing so well, because at the end of the day, you'll be measured based on this person who is not performing well, because your team will lose based on this. But now for an individual sport, you put in the work and you see the results. Actually, you put in the work and you can actually look at your results and see, yes, I'm excelling in this because I've worked, I'm putting targets. The individual sports. But now on the other side, the ugly and not the good one is it's a lonely world there if you don't have resources and a support system. And the world will see. I've been looking at how people have been reacting to the performance of the athletes in Budapest. And I can see the ugly side of the social media. They don't want to understand what has been going on. They're insulting, they're telling them how they're not performing, how their game has dropped, how they should forget about performing such a high level. It's an ugly, now that's the ugly side. And you're facing this world alone. You're being looked at as this individual athlete. So
okay, firstly, I think the other things, again, I think for individual sports, the athlete has to be, in terms of things like discipline, you have to be incredibly disciplined to be able to wake up by yourself and benchmark things against your own performance and just keep going and keep going. So I think you can build quite some reserve of this personal discipline, which is quite commendable. The other reward, obviously, is when you win, you might get Isuzu, D-Max.
Now the win. By the way, when you win, the endorsement come to you. You don't have to share. It's you. It's so there is that part of the losing side. It's very tough, but the winning, the benefits, you're reaping them yourself as an individual. Unlike others, you find if you're getting, let's say, reward money as a team, you've been told you're getting reward money of like $1 million. You have to share within the group. For individual getting that $1 million, it's you to decide where it goes.
What is
those are the perks of the individual sports. And when you find most of the people who have come out talking about mental health internationally, there are people in sports like tennis, swimming, because even that we have the team and you have the individual competition. We have athletes who have come out and talked much about even facing the anxiety of facing the social media, the press, what happens in the social media after losing.
Is she called Naomi?
Naomi Osaka.
I think she opted out of one or two events. Just because on mental health grounds. Yeah,
and she said that social anxiety, and later even said she was struggling with depression. She was fine, but she's like, it's okay because I'm at this point, I don't feel comfortable even speaking to the press And this is one of the key things. Actually, when on the media part, it's part and parcel of the sport. And it can be brutal. I remember even this tournament, there's one athlete who came in and asked, after we lost the game, and the media guys, they asked, how does it feel even losing? What do you think you didn't do well for you to lose? And he really got annoyed. He didn't know how to go about it. And you can see it really affected him because the media, as I said, it's story. We want a story. And you're not aware of how this is affecting the player. And this player is not equipped enough to know how to handle. At that time, it's immediately after the tournament, like those minutes after the tournament. It's part and parcel of the game. You talk to the media. But even me, I'm processing this loss. And you're asking me that. So he really got annoyed. And you're looking at the reaction, the emotions going through. But later, I talked to them, even in other teams. So but now, unlike the team sport, the individual, you're all there alone. You're tackling this. When the crowds are coming at you, you don't have someone there to come and give you a hug who understands what you're going through inside that field at the moment. It's you and you alone. So that can affect them mentally.
Okay.
Yeah.